it's Jennifer from Belladonna's Botanicals, and today I'm doing a podcast with my friend Eddie, and I'm going to let him introduce himself to you guys. So, take it away.
Hi, everybody. I am the Reverend Dr. Eddie Romanov, and we're here to talk about really basic stuff that most of you should know, but don't be ashamed if you don't know. Everybody started somewhere.
Yep. So, Reverend Doctor, is that a subgenius thing?
Yes, I paid back when it was still only $20. I paid $20 for that.
Nice.
But
Yeah,
I
we were
re-upped recently, and it's up to inflation has hit it hard. I think it's up to like 50 now. But the cards are much nicer.
Nice. Yeah, we were all big into the Church of Subgenius back in the early 90s in college and stuff. So,
And I
representing.
got a doctorate of the forbidden sciences there too, with a
Nice.
dual specialization in anarchaeology and metaprimatology.
Perfect. So today, Eddie and I are going to talk about, because we have a lot of offline conversations, just, talking about different things in the community, different things with magic practices. Sorry, the light from my window is coming in. So whee, light worker activate. It will pass eventually. There's just like a tiny little crack in my blind that's right in my face. So what this topic we're going to talk about ostensibly is going to be pro tips to elevate your magical practice. So these are things that we are going to talk about. I would say this is going to be your top 10-ish pro tips to elevate your magical practice. This is based on our numerous decades, I think, at this point, of practice, education, give or take. For me, I know it wasn't always like consistent practice, but I mean, the stuff has been with me for a very long time. So, and it's from our observations, from working with clients and customers, through working with all their colleagues, and all that good stuff. So the first topic I want to talk about, and this is one, if you watch my channel, you probably hear me kvetch about it quite often, and that is thinking for yourself and making a practice that is your own.
Yeah, magic is necessarily idiosyncratic, right?
Mhm.
It's not science
Mhm.
in that it works the same everywhere all the time, right?
Results may vary, as they say.
Right. And your attitude and what you bring to it.
Mhm.
And the biggest thing is magic is not something that happens out there. It's something that happens in here. And
Mhm.
so all of the stuff you're doing is about creating the right headspace in
Mhm.
here. And each of us is different. So what we have to do to get there is necessarily going to be different.
Yeah, it's a
Individually.
very mental practice, and I think that
And
gets lost sometimes. It's just how much headspace and how much of your what's the word I'm looking for? But I haven't finished my coffee yet, so we're gonna say brain juice. Wow. Um, Here's my molten.
it's the
People
holy grail.
are. Yeah,
Um,
it's my milk glass coffee mug. So.
there's individual differences, but there's cultural differences, generational differences. This is
Mhm.
the problem I have with when people come and want to have their dreams interpreted. Like,
Mm.
well, I can tell you what a crow means in like these 17 different cultures, but I can't tell you what your brain is trying to say to you, because it's not about what the crow means in these 17 different cultures. It's what does a crow mean to you?
Mhm.
It's
Yeah, I
symbolism.
mean, it's going to be much different, like, if you work with the Morrigan, and, like, where I live now, I have so many crows and black vultures all over the place that I feel
Mhm.
like there's a connection more with Morrigan and the land through, kind of the land spirit, through the animal kingdom and all of that. That's something that I can say here. But, if you don't work with the Morgan, I mean, the crow is symbolic of so many different spirits and entities. So while I may go, oh my God, it's the Morgan presence, you might be looking at it from who is it in who are crows associated with in Norse? I'm not
Odin.
Odin. That's what I thought. I was like, it's one of the big ones that I know the names of. I'm not overly well versed in Norse heathenry, so
and beyond those, even the subjective differences we talked about,
right.
there are going to be differences in just the environment you're in. So like if you've got this ritual that says you have to do it skyclad because it's Wiccan, I'm going to recommend you not do that in Iceland in winter, let's say.
Or, Pennsylvania in winter.
So the point is,
like sometimes you have to. This is something I've been talking about recently, and this is a good lead into it, is breaking traditions and moving beyond the book. Where it's, and I see people struggling with this so much, as you have a very myopic worldview of the blinders of this is this cultural tradition. It has to be done exactly this way. It won't work any other way unless I do it this way with this, and this thing. And I have to do it exactly as this person written this book. Even though some of these things are beyond my capability, like say performing at skyclad in the middle of winter in Iceland. Like there's times when you want to use your keyword here, discernment, as a compass, as a guiding light through your practice. Just because someone else did this skyclad doesn't mean you have to. I personally just don't want, even in my own home, I don't want to do things skyclad because I am messy and there's just places I don't want candle wax and herbs collecting. And
I prefer not to light certain parts of me on fire.
Right. Burnt hair does not smell good. It's using your discernment and being okay to make substitutions for things and to move beyond the practice. I'm sorry, I don't know who needs to hear this. There's no one right way to do things. All avenues to this, regardless of your practice, your tradition, your cultural heritage, all of those practices are valid. It's a means to an end. And magic takes the path of least resistance.
This is art,
Yeah.
And all the normal rules of art school apply. Don't get precious with it, and improvise, adapt, overcome, have fun with it. You're creating something, and the big thing is, again, it's in addition to the fact that magic is something that doesn't happen out there, it's something that happens in here. It's not something that happens up here, it happens in here, right? You got to feel it.
Right, because I can sit here and go, I'm gonna light this candle and hope for the best. Why didn't this work? Well, I didn't win the lottery yet. Why didn't this work? Well, how about now? How about now? Patience is also a very important element of the magical practice.
Indeed, it is. And as we've both commented to each other on repeated occasions, patience sucks.
It is. Oh my God! Like now, I want the results now. Yeah, I said it's human nature to struggle with some of these things. We all do. We all want the results to be like, here you go. It doesn't always happen that way. Things happen in their own time, and sometimes we realize, like, what I realize is how I'm asking for something.
Yep.
Like being very specific. Like if I'm short on money, like, if I need money all at once for rent, which it's the first of the month, so legit. And I always have money coming in every day from multiple sources. There's sometimes when I don't have there's that weird nexus of when things are clearing and coming in and coming out where I don't have all the money I need. Now I can dip into savings, push things over, and go back and forth like that. So it's like when I want to say I need to have this amount of money in sales and this amount of money in my account by X date, I also have to add the caveat that without taking money out of my savings account,
Mhm.
because I think the universe looks at when I say I want to have, X amount of money in my account, they go, well, you've got this account here with all the money you need. So, mhm.
Yeah, it can be very literal sometimes.
Yeah, some
Um,
spirits are very literal, and it's I think that, going back a little bit to the breaking with traditions part is like how this all starts with how we see magic and what our perceptions of magic are.
mhm,
And that is going to be critical because a lot of people come into this expecting the Harry Potter of it all or the Sabrina of it all. And I know, yeah, I kind of have in our rudimentary outline, and I think maybe I might bump this up a little bit earlier, is you know, drop the Hollywood theatrics and have some reasonable expectations of it all. Because I think that for me, and that is, the reasonable expectations, I do struggle with myself. I'm not here speaking for my soapbox and down on high of, well, I never do these things, and you shouldn't do them either. I'm like, live and learn. A lot of
mhm,
this is how we have learned over our, at times when we're practicing every day, at times when we're not practicing at
mhm.
all, or just researching, or just interested in something. So,
Well, and learn to be tactical with it too, which is okay. So even if it was possible to wave your magic wand and make $1 million show up in 5 minutes, okay,
with my magic goblet, I will.
yeah. Um, so let's say that takes. What do you think is going to take more energy? Right? Is it going to be wave the magic wand and make it show up in 5 minutes, $1 million show up
Mhm.
in 5 minutes, or is it going to be when you've identified the need for the $200 3 weeks from now, if you do it then to make $200 show up 3 weeks, the further removed you are from the event in time and space, the easier it is to change it.
So you're
Um,
allowing that time for things to kind of flow. If you're like, "I need $100 right now," you're
because there's
probably a
more
little
there's more
limited.
paths of manifestation then, right?
Yes, and it's a matter of how we integrate the mundane with the magic. Because I feel like I talk about this quite often,
Yes.
is that, yeah, sure, I can do a weight loss spell and whatnot, but if I'm gonna sit on the couch eating a gallon of ice cream every night and a McDonald's, whatever, I'm probably not gonna be successful in that because I'm not doing the mundane bullshit I need to do in order for that to manifest. Because in order to, manifest weight loss, you do have to do some mundane things. You might need to go to the gym, you might need to change your diet,
Eat a salad.
switch to diet soda, or, cut an extra coffee out of your thing a day. There's mundane things you will have to do to get to that result or that goal. And sometimes we don't always realize that when we get the thing we're asking for, that it's actually the thing that we asked for, because it may arrive in a much different way than what we thought.
Mhm. Well, and the example for doing the work, the mundane work that I always use is it's not just the oldest magic that we know of. It's the
Mhm,
oldest art that we know of. It's very nearly the oldest human activity that we know of,
mhm,
which is cave paintings, right?
mhm. Yeah,
So you
you were
look at
telling me about
these
that, yeah.
12, 15,000-year-old cave paintings and they're hunting scenes. Now,
Mhm,
people think, well, is that magic? Well, yeah, it is, because that's sigil magic, right?
mhm,
They're literally visualizing a successful hunt, right? Now, when they did that, did they go in the cave painting and beat on the drums, go ooh booga booga, and paint the yak on the wall, and then just wait for it to magically show up
mhm,
dead so that they could eat it? No, they sharpened their spears.
Mm-hmm.
They studied the yak, and they learned where the yak was going to be and how the yak
Yeah, because if you're hunting for yak in the middle of a lake, you're probably not going to find any yak there. You might find some
right.
fish, though.
So they did all the study, they did all the work, they did everything that they could in their mundane powers. They did everything they possibly could, magically and mundanely,
Mm-hmm.
to get the yak.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's what magic is for. That's why we started doing it. It's once there's factors you can control and there's factors you can't control. And magic entered the picture for us when we recognized that there were factors in a hunt that we couldn't control. And
Oh
we
shit! It just started raining.
right. And so it's a matter of we've done everything we possibly can to ensure a successful hunt. And so now we're going to do magic to take care of the stuff that we can't control, hopefully, because
Mm-hmm.
this is a high stakes game. If we don't get the yak, some people are going to starve to death.
Mm-hmm.
It's on the one hand, yes, it's real, and it has a very real effect on whether or not the hunt can be on the odds of the hunt being successful.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, and one of the big ways that it helps make it more likely that the hunt will be successful is by taking that anxiety off of you. It's a catharsis, so that now you're sitting in the tree with your spear waiting for the yak to come by, calm, cool, and collected, not, oh my god, I gotta get this yak. And when you're white knuckling stuff, you're not going to be effective. And that's in mundane work as well as magical work. And one of the big secrets of magic is that if you're doing your magic the right way, um, you're not going to be white knuckling it anymore.
No.
Right? You can relax into it and be effective.
So what do you do when your magic isn't working? When you're like, I've been doing, I'm working a spell for whatever, or a ritual or something. I mean, even just in spirit communication, in terms of like spiritual ascension and awakening, what
Mhm.
do you do when you have been working on something for an extended period of time? You've thrown everything you can possibly throw at it. What do you do next? Because I see that a lot, and
Mhm.
I know I'm guilty of it myself, of keep doing the same magic over and over and over again and going, why isn't this working?
Well, for there's two parts to this, right? Um, and I'll go with the easier one first, or not the
Mhm.
easier one, the one that I sort of realized first, um, which is that as long as you're having that feeling of anxiety about the thing, right?
Mhm.
You're not the ritual's not done yet.
Yeah. The watch pot never boils.
If you're still checking on this thing every 5 minutes, if if you still feel like this might not happen,
Mhm.
if you don't have the warm and fuzzies about it,
Mhm.
um, then you're not done yet,
No.
right? Because again, one of the big purposes of it is to get that warm and fuzzy feeling and not be anxious about it anymore.
Set it and forget it.
Yes, and or to use the mega church parlance, name it and claim it, right?
Uh,
It's as long and I don't know that this is as hard and fast rule as it is in like law of attraction and stuff like that, but um anxiety has a way of unfocusing our will. And it's not the ritual that does it. It's not anything else that does it. With the mundane action as well as the magical actions, right? What did Uncle Al say? Magic is the art and science of creating change in accordance with the will. The
mhm.
will is the thing that makes the change. Now, that will manifests itself in magical ways and in mundane ways, right? The will to lose weight will make you do a ritual to lose weight, glamour magic. The
Mhm.
will to lose weight will also make you eat the salad.
Yeah, it's a lot of it is changing your mindset, being open to changing your mindset, being open to
Yes.
changing your habits, being open to be like, this thing that I want, that I really, really want, and doing all this magic for, is this what I really want?
Well, that's
You,
point 2.
yeah.
But so that will to make it effective has to be laser-like. It has to be a
Mm,
very, very focused thing, and anxiety is like fog. It just scatters that and until it can't see the target anymore,
right.
right?
Right.
And so until you cut through all of that and can get that laser-like focus, you're not done with the ritual yet. And if you
Absolutely.
keep doing the same thing over and over again and you're not getting there, then that's probably a good time to think about changing what you're doing
Exactly.
and
Like, a lot of things
refactoring.
take a layered approach or a multifaceted approach. Sometimes, like, for me, it helps to, like, write down, like, okay, well, I wanna achieve financial freedom. Okay, well, how am I going to do that? What are the avenues I need to work on to achieve that? What mundane things do I need to do? Okay, so here's 3 things. I'm gonna do maybe some ritual stuff
Mhm.
around that. Like, I have an event this weekend. I wanna make X amount of money in sales at this event. Okay, well, I might, between now and then, do a simple candle magic spell with the intention to manifest those sales.
Right, and you'll be in really advanced magic territory, at the point at which you don't when you make your to-do list, you make your business plan, the ritual items are just other bullet points on the business plan. You
Yeah.
don't think of them in terms of this is the magical stuff I'm doing and this is the non-magical stuff I'm doing because all magical work is mundane. All mundane work is also magical because it's just making change in accordance with the will.
Yeah.
Um, Now, point 2, and this one took a lot, and I joke about this a lot, but it took a long time for me to grok it, which is my magic always works, right? Sometimes it even does what I expected it to do.
Yeah, I
Um,
always give the great, example of, well, I was doing a bunch of magic in 2021 to, um, resolve, some debt, pay to have debt elimination, have money, that I owe disappeared. And one of the things I was like, well, I'd like to have my car loan paid off this year. My car loan got paid off within a month because my car got totaled. I was obviously fine. It was parked on the side of the road when I lived in Philly. Someone hit it, ran off, hit it hard enough while parked on a one-way side street to total it. So my car loan was paid off. I got I manifested what I want, just not in the specific way, because what ended up happening there is, well, I paid my car loan was taken care of, but now I'm paying twice as much in insurance, and because I didn't get a whole lot, the insurance settlement basically just covered what I owed on the car loan, and then after the deductible, I had maybe $500 left, so I had to lease a car. So now instead of paying, say, $200 a month for a car loan, I'm paying $450 a month, and my car insurance went up because I had a newer car and all that. So, did my magic work? Technically, it did, but results may vary, and I didn't ask for things in the way I should have. And that was a bitter pill to swallow and hard lesson to learn.
and we don't. I mean, we are magicians and we are black magicians, so we don't want to get like God has a plan about
Yeah.
everything and just accept shit that we shouldn't have to accept. But at the same time, um, I think we've all asked for stuff and not gotten it, and then down the road, months or years later, be like, "Oh, I'm really glad that that didn't work out the way
Oh
I
yeah,
thought."
exactly. All the get your ex back bullshit. I'm like, because I feel like the universe is just sitting there going, this person made you miserable, is making you miserable. Why?
Yeah,
Why, human? Why? Why do you want to go back to that?
I mean, Asmodeus especially is really good for. Is that what you really want? Because I'll give it to you.
And that
teach you a
sometimes I have
valuable
that
lesson.
sometimes with Lucifer as well. It's like, okay, I'm going to give you exactly what you asked for and watch you fall flat on your face. Oh, did
Yeah.
you learn a lesson there? Okay, good. Now we can move on. So,
Um,
I mean, I think one of the things, and this kind of ties into the initial point of thinking for yourself, is, looking at the crux of all magic, regardless of tradition, whether you're Wiccan, theistic Satanist, anything in between and beyond that, is looking at the fact that magic is fueled by intention that leads to manifestation. And I know those are some sort of new agey buzzwords and stuff but that is really what it comes down to. I mean, if you want to find better words for it, find better words for it.
fair.
But you're gonna find, like I found when I switched my magical workings kind of across the board to manifest things versus say, I'm going to curse this person, you know, and throw the baneful magic at them because it's, there's a lot of people out there that espouse that as a primary mode of magic of, well, we practice black magic. We're satanic and Luciferian and stuff. We got to be badass magicians and cursing people all the time and stuff. And I have opinions on that, but
I'll hex the shit out of people, but if you spend your entire life hexing the shit out of people,
you're pretty much just gonna be cursing yourself.
you're gonna be
And I watch those people, and I'm like, maybe if you stop cursing everyone, your life would suck less. Try manifesting instead.
well, and can I say asshole?
Yeah.
Edit that out. Okay. There's also the factor of, if you're walking around all day and every person you run into is an asshole, you might need to take a look in the mirror and think about who the real asshole is.
Yeah, it's one of those things. If you keep having the same problem over and over again in entirely different situations with entirely different groups of people, chances are, I mean, I'm allowing for a margin of error that you might just be running into a lot of terrible people because, hey, if you work retail, you probably are just surrounded by terrible people all the time. Um, I'm talking retail in the sort of like mass market chain store retail. I'm not talking about, like a bougie boutique retail or whatever. But and now I completely lost my train of thought because that's a thing that happens.
It's to use the X thing. We never want to victim blame. We don't blame the victim. That
But
said,
chances are 90% of the time it's you. The
that
problem is
said,
you.
if you keep attracting the exact same abusive asshole over
Like
and
attracts
over again,
like. There's something you need to heal.
yes. And this is why, for instance, and we're talking an awful lot about, practical enchantment here, which is, the magic to get stuff. And by get stuff, I mean, let's be honest, again, we're black magicians here. We can be
I'm a
honest with
demonolatress.
90% of practical enchantment is getting laid and getting paid, right? And
Fair point.
there's
And
nothing
occasionally
wrong
getting
with that.
revenge.
But at the end of the day, that's not what we're here for.
Right.
And
Are we
if you
treating
don't
magic like a spiritual piggy bank, or are we trying to evolve
yes,
and reach, spiritual awakening and enlightenment? Or am I just like, money, please?
right. And to be like really ultimate black magician here, when you do the inner work and you do the great work and
And
you
you
do
lay off the meth pipe?
the spiritual alchemy and all of that shit, right? And you
Mhm.
make yourself better. You get better at the manifesting shit too, right?
Yeah.
Like you want to be able to make $1 million show up in 5 minutes. That's how you do it.
Yeah, I mean, and like the timing of magic is a lot of times when things are taking longer, you sometimes have to look at, and some of this goes back to the reasonable expectations. Why isn't this working? Is this thing that I am trying to do so convoluted with so much moving parts and you would have to override the free will of multiple people on down the line. And, there's a point in time in which you have to say, I need to change my focus on this. Like, I've got annoying, well, I mean, this was more when I was in Philadelphia. I've got annoying neighbors. Well, I could sit there and like curse them, or I can do magic to get myself the fuck out of the Philadelphia because I was miserable. Or I can be like, hey, let's get them a job out of state and they have to move. Or if you want to be nefarious about it, let them get evicted.
Or like I did, and do a pray novena to Santa Muerte and burn their house down. Nobody got hurt. Nobody
Yes.
got hurt. Insurance paid for it.
Yeah.
And they built themselves a very nice new house far, far away.
That's good.
So it was win-win for everybody.
Yeah. But that brings up an excellent point too, is there are consequences to those things. Did you like after going back to my when my car got totaled, and if you've watched my channel, I've no love lost for the latter years of my life in Philadelphia. I was very miserable and very angry and surrounded by complete and utter just rude a-holes all the time.
You were in Philadelphia.
I was in Philadelphia. I joke that all Philadelphians are bilingual. The primary language is rudeness. The secondary language is sarcasm. Good luck figuring that out. But I can, so the car thing, which is where I left off, is like, okay, so I did a very powerful working, on the baneful side, at the time with Abaddon. Possibly I did something with Azrael Ludu. The psilocybin kicked in and there was a fire pit, a lot of music, and I burnt some intention stuff. And then my skull mala, a bracelet that was associated with my workings with Abaddon to that time, exploded while my friend was driving me home on the DC Beltway, and I was cracking up. I'm like, all of a sudden, it didn't get caught on anything. It just literally exploded off my hand. And I'm still, a little, I'm like, so you're going to find a whole bunch of little wooden skull beads. I mean, they went everywhere. They were in my clothing, in my purse, all over her car. And it was just like, it kind of was like, okay, like it was significant of something happening at that point. Now, I got home and did my stuff, and a few weeks later there was some very loud sounds of what I can only I can only describe it as a bus accident, because it was literally a bus accident on my corner, in which people in Philly also drive like maniacs and no one has insurance. So it was the Septobus versus a passenger vehicle that had way more people in it than space. And then it plowed into a bunch of cars parked on the side of the road. I mean, there were some injuries, nothing, life-threatening or fatal. And, it was, I didn't think anything about it. I ran out, I brought people, some bandages or whatever. Until the cops and the fire and ambulance got there. But the thing was with the bus accident, after things were cleared up and I was walking back to the house, I got this whoosh through me, it is done.
Mm-hmm.
And just this feeling like, okay, so that get back at that person who totaled my car resulted in an unintentional bus accident. I wouldn't have wanted to cause a bus accident.
No.
Philly, I mean, I think SEPTA intentionally wants to cause bus accidents because they're just that inept. Things I don't miss about Philadelphia for 500. SEPTA.
It's Philadelphia.
It's Philadelphia. It smells like urine all the time.
It's zombies and desperation and bullshit. And the cheesesteaks aren't even that good. You get better cheesesteaks.
They're not. So I completely forgot where I was going with. It's not working. So, but I think it was the consequences too when you're doing these things is sometimes to get back at that person. Are you willing to down a an airliner with 200 and something
Right.
people on it just to get back at that one person magically.
Well, and you did hit on, like, I think this is for anybody starting out in magic. This is probably like the single most important thing. And it comes up all the freaking time, which is we don't do targeted love spells, right? And the broader principle there is we don't try to override people's free will. Now, everybody says that, right? Nobody says why we don't do that beyond the, Wiccan new agey white light bullshit of it's wrong.
Well,
There's
I
a
mean,
very practical reason why we don't do that.
yeah.
And it's if I'm teaching you banishing, right?
Mhm.
Bullet point number 1 on the very first slide in that slide deck is that you have to remember that in your temple, you are God, right? And this is
Mhm.
the secret. This is the secret hidden in plain sight in the lesser pentagram ritual, right?
Mhm.
Is you're standing there and you are calling these archangels to stand guard over things, and you're doing it in a way that is a recapitulation of the creation of the universe. So the magician, the operator, is creating the universe and calling the archangels in to guard it. Who does that? Right?
Yeah, I
Who
always
does that?
wonder about that too. In practicing demonology,
Mhm.
like S. Conley has a great adaptation. I think it is in her psychic protection magic book. That is, instead of using the archangels, you use like Belial, Lucifer, Flurius, and Leviathan instead
Yeah,
of of
mine,
the archangels. Because for me, it seems like I was always
yeah,
I never really did the lesser banishing and ritual the
no.
pentagram that often because I'm like, why am I calling in archangels to work with demons? That doesn't really make sense.
I never did the angel version. I used to do there's in chaos magic, there's one that's just, agnostic,
Yeah,
elemental spirit
I
kind.
like the demonolatry one because those are spirits
And
I actually
now,
work
yeah,
with.
the one I do now is the consorts of Lucifer. So
Okay.
Lilith, Agrat Mahalath, and Nama.
Hmm.
And then I also do it Widdershins starting in the north. So I go north around to the east, not east around to the north. Um, but regardless.
I'm trying to
So the
remember which
whole
one
point
it
of it
is.
is that you are standing in the place of God,
Mhm.
right? And you are asserting, again, it's not that anything about the words you're saying or the hand waving you're doing is go is that's not what the magic is. The magic is you are creating this
Or is it the
construct.
sunlight? There we go. Here, have some magic.
Yeah, the construct, you're creating this construct in your head of this is my subjective universe, and in it I am God, right? And what that means is nobody gets to fuck with you in there. The reason why that's so effective as a banishing ritual is because any spirit, there's no God, no spirit, no nobody, no nothing that can fuck with you in your subjective universe, right? So here's the problem. When we start trying to override somebody's free will, right? Now I'm the demon that's fucking around inside their circle. And and I am one good banishing away from getting my face melted. That's
Mhm.
why you don't do that. I mean, beyond the fact that it's shitty, right? And so sometimes when people ask me about like um targeted love spells, I'll tell them to just go get some Rohypnol, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I'd never do that. That's terrible.
Well, you're kinda doing that,
That
though. I mean,
yeah,
I've changed my
thing is when
perspective
people
on
ask
that
me,
too. Like, I kind of look at love magic at changing the energy of a situation.
yeah,
Like, I look at it sometimes and then, like, in healing aspects, and things like that too, because I'm not really bending your will and making you fall in love with me. Because I mean, at that point, I'm like, yeah, it's like,
There's nothing wrong with getting dressed up for a first date. There's nothing wrong with putting your
right.
best foot forward, and that's what magic is. It's
Would
again,
you
it's
would you, would you want to be with someone at the end of the day who you know probably only loves you because of the magic you did on them? That
no,
wouldn't be with
and
you otherwise.
beyond that, like, okay, so if this person had no chance whatsoever of wanting to be in a relationship with you and you magic them into it, you think that's
Mhm.
going to be an enjoyable relationship?
No, because if you're doing a love obsession spell on someone, do you want a stalker?
You know? Eh, Um,
But these are the things that, like, kind of looking into sort of where we've come in this conversation is what brings people to magic usually, unless you're born into it or have some kind of experience early on. What are the top things that bring people into magic? Love, money, occasionally healing, and revenge. Those are like the top four things.
getting laid and getting paid.
And occasionally protection and stuff like that. But
Mhm.
those are there's usually a catalyst. And for a lot of people, those catalysts prove to have a lot of desperation attached to them. It's like, yes, you can do justice and court case magic, but sometimes, like, yeah, again, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of things there on the mundane level that you've got to take into consideration to magic
Mhm.
around or change the energy of. So it's kind of like thinking of it in those terms. Maybe the best approach is, in a just say some sort of civil suit. Okay, well, the cops didn't show up to testify against you, so the thing was the case was thrown out. So what I was saying is, like, a lot of times there's a magical emergency. So what you have to consider there is, in that sense, when someone is coming into magic entirely new on an emergent situation. Now, I'm saying this also as a product creator too, is you're putting products into the hands of people that don't know how to, use them or wield them, and sometimes can get in over their heads, magically speaking. I mean, I've done it before myself.
Oh yeah.
Um, it's because you're trying the desperation of it is so overpowering that it's just gonna add, sort of like static to anything that's going on because
I just want to throw this quote in there. I think it's Tommy Kelly from Adventures in Woo Woo, who likes to say that nobody ever got into magic because their life was going well.
yeah, and yeah, not gonna lie, that was a lot of it for me. I mean, some of it, like, early on, like when I was a child, was
Mhm.
much more natural, or it's just what I was interested in. But yeah,
Yeah,
like,
I
the
well,
practice of magic.
I didn't consider that magic. It was just it's kind of like it's one of those things where as I've learned more about traditional Appalachian granny magic. It's like, oh, it's like, well, we don't like my grandmother. God, if you'd called her a witch, you'd be dead.
Oh,
But
yeah.
we don't call that witchcraft. It's just what you do. You
Yeah, a
know.
lot of the folk magic practices, like, I mean, my family's Eastern European, so, like, a lot of the Slavic folk magic practices became syncretized, a lot of the same way in which aspects of hoodoo have syncretizations of, like, say, working with saints. It's same thing as
Mm.
with in the Slavic witchcraft. It's a lot of Slavic folk magic practices got so, um, integrated into just regular daily mundane practice that it's like the meanings got lost of things. Like, once I read there's a book, I forget the author, it's called Slavic Witchcraft, but once I read that, I
Mm.
was like, "Holy shit, my grandmother makes so much more sense now." Again, couldn't call her a witch, but, I'm like, "Oh, okay, so the pasanki, which are Eastern European hand-painted eggs." I don't have any in here, I don't think, to show you, but, those are actually fertility and prosperity amulets. My grandma
Makes
always had
sense.
those around her house. You know, the sort of cowbell thing with a embroidered strap on the front door was to welcome, you know, good spirits into your home. It was just all these things, like the fabric patterns all had meaning, magical meanings to them and intentions to them, and it just kind of got lost in that way. So I'm not sure where I was going with it,
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
but
I lost. I think we both lost the point there.
yeah. All right. Well, we'll figure something out or back to it eventually. But
Adventures in neurospicy witchcraft.
yes.
What were we doing again?
Well, I mean, that brings me to another topic, another thought, and this kind of, you know, piggybacks onto the magical emergencies, but also goes back into the Hollywood of it all, is about things.
Well, and manage expectations. I'm not. I can't. Okay, I can't physically turn you into a werewolf. One and two. All of those legends about werewolves, people physically turning into wolves, aren't about people physically turning into fucking wolves.
Literally. Everyone is so freaking literal. It drives me literally insane. But that also does go into the Hollywood theatrics of it all, is that when it comes to those expectations, I think this is where I was going with it, is that when you watch something, when you watch your Harry Potters and your Sabrinas and Buffy and Supernatural and all these, you know, and not for nothing, I love all these shows too, but I also know that I'm not going to hold my hand up and lightning bolts are going to fly out of it and go pew pew and magic achieved. Or let me go to my lab and whip up a potion. What was that?
What if, and this is a really crazy thought, okay? What if the shit they wrote in those grimoires was symbolic?
Holy effing crap. It's not literal? What? If I was wearing pearls, I would clutch them. But
Radical. Yeah. A radical idea, I know.
Yeah, and a lot of this, I mean, again, it goes into thinking for yourself and having the useful skill of discernment and understanding nuance, which I talk about a lot in videos, which is sorely lacking across the board in our contemporary culture. Is that being able to go, are they literally doing this, or is this symbolic of something? Because you have to realize with a lot of the old grimoires, things have gone through translations and, you know, lost, found, buried in peat moss for, you know, 200 years, that kind of thing.
Well, and boy, I'm going to get really close to a really touchy subject here. One of my favorite things is when people take a look at something like chaos magic or something like the Cliffoth, the way we work with it now, that's really only 50 or 60 years old.
Uh-huh.
And they say things like, that's just made up. Somebody just made that up. I'm like, you say that like
all of this wasn't made up?
Right. If you think King Solomon is the one who really wrote any of those grimoires, I've got bad news for you. And beyond that, at least a few of those grimoires were literally thrown together. The reason we don't know who wrote them is because they were written essentially by the guys who owned the printing press, because they just wanted to sell books, and that was what was selling. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing. And yet it works. So there's something really important there about the nature of magic that I want everyone at home to think about.
Excuse me. And the thing that, like, I've discovered, if you've watched any of my recent videos on the Goetia path working and stuff, is like, I'm sorry, but I find the rituals, especially like any of those old grimoire traditions, to be downright abusive to the spirit world. Like,
well, the part they leave out is that, especially the Goetia, to when people, this is why when people talk about doing the Goetia by the book, nobody who says they're doing the Goetia by the book is doing the Goetia by the book, because to do the Goetia by the book, you must be ordained into the minor order of exorcists. So that in today's Catholic Church, that means you already have to be ordained as a transitional deacon on your way to the priesthood.
Technicalities. Where's the fun in that?
You know, so yes, the reason why is because and yes, the true by the book Goetia is based off of an exorcism rite of the time.
Mm.
And that's why you are browbeating and threatening the spirits.
Yeah, like I just never. I'm like, if you have to threaten demons, if you want to work with demons, and you have to threaten them with like archangels, and you're thinking that your human ego overrides these divine intelligences, I'm sorry, you're freaking dumb.
Oh yeah.
Like it's and there's so many people that practice this way, and I'm just like, and that's like, as when I started really getting into the left-hand path spectrum about 4 or 5 years ago, um, it's like I'm like, okay, I'm reading all these grimoires, I'm looking, and like nothing from the Goetia, and even there's other people who have done, modern, Goetia path workings and stuff, and like not, but it was all based deeply entrenched on the grimoire tradition, and none of it ever seemed at all interesting to me. Like,
Mhm.
I've worked with goetic spirits, I just do not do the goetic from
Yeah.
the actual Goetia path working. I have been working through it using S. Conley's Daemonolatry Goetia and the 76-week Goetia path working. It's an entirely different approach, not rude, and you're building a relationship with the spirits. You're not
Mhm.
threatening them with, Archangel Fury and blasting rods and banishing them, a simple license to depart. Thank you for joining me for this ritual. You are free to go at your own leisure, or stay
Mhm.
for some cookies and Netflix and chill. There's no reasons you cannot Netflix and chill with your demon buddies. But I digress. But that's the thing. Like, and it's like for me, and I don't know if it's just the neurodivergent thing. Like, I just don't get it. Like, I'm sorry if someone's gonna come in here yelling at me and threatening me. Um, I'm gonna kind of be like, yeah. And you
Yeah.
might get something thrown at you. And I have to wonder if the reason that there are so many bad experiences with the demonic divine are from dipshits doing this stuff and having no freaking clue.
Mhm.
Like, I'm sorry, I'm not pissing off the spirit world.
Well,
Like,
and
I know my place.
so one of the reasons lucid dreaming is so big in magical circles is because lucid dreaming, being able to control your dreams, is about being able to manage your expectations. Right. And magic is the same way. So if you go into a ritual working with a spirit that you have to like go in loaded with bear and threaten them with, everlasting chains of torment in hell, um, if you're going into it expecting an adversarial relationship, what do you think you're going to get?
Yeah. Where do we start here? Now, like, let's take a moment to regroup. So we've got the core tenet of thinking for yourself. And in that, it is crucial to make your practice your own. My practice is not your practice. Eddie's practice is not your practice. Fancy book author's practice is not your practice. You can use those as a jumping off point to develop your practice. It's what we all do. It's how we all learn. You take what works and leave the rest. Like for me, like I said, the traditional grimoire stuff, I'm just not interested in it. And for me, being neurodivergent, ceremonial magic is just pointless to me. Like for me, I am going to be more focused on not fucking it up, reading, getting the
Mhm.
incantations and reading from the book and making sure I have all the things and I'm doing all the things that there's no magic happening. I'm just, performing a play at that point.
Mhm.
I'm reading a book. That's what's
And
happening.
and that's
That
why I
does
like
not
it.
work for me. It might work for other people.
Right.
Great. Hey, hats off to you if ceremonial magic is your jam and that's what puts you in the state. Me, it's too distracting.
Mhm.
There's too much going on. And I just, no, it just doesn't work for me. So I'm not going to force myself to be a ceremonial magician.
Right.
So above that, talking about this is where being comfortable breaking with traditions comes in handy, because if you're able to be like, hey, you know what, this kind of practice or this thing just does not work for me. It might be part of this tradition or part of this area of magic of which I'm involved. I'm just not doing this part. Like, not everyone is comfortable, say, doing bloodletting, and some people can't for reasons. I mean, if you have a history of, you know,
Hmm?
unaliving ideations and, self harmful activities, you might not want to do it. It could be triggering. If you have, a blood, disorder like hemophilia, or if you're on blood thinners, you might not want to make yourself bleed unnecessarily.
If you have an eating disorder or are diabetic, you probably shouldn't be fasting.
Exactly. Like, it's, for me, fasting I can do it because I don't really have any legitimate medical reasons why I can't. I just, no one wants to go into a ritual hangry, because I mean, there's a point in time where I get hungry to the point where I turn into a toddler. I've got one sock on, one off, and I'm yelling at the refrigerator, and just I'm in toddler mode. You want me to construct a ritual like that?
Yep.
No.
Same
No.
thing as, I work with the runes. With my back, there is exactly zero chance of me ever like doing the binding thing and hanging and doing the suspension bondage thing off of a yew tree. I'm not
Right.
doing that because I would like to keep walking.
Right. Like, you have, like, there's things I'm allergic to. Like, I had to stop using mullein leaf in my products because I was allergic to it. It would make my chest and my arms, everything would get bright red and itchy, and I would cough, not for just a little bit of time, like for days. And it was like
Mhm.
that jagged, I'm gonna pee myself cough. That forceful cough, that, because what
Yep.
what it is with mullein is it has this tiny little prickly bits in the leaves. So when you do something like run it through an industrial grinder to put it in an incense blend or a powder, that particulate is all over in your air.
Yeah,
So
it's
I'm
everywhere.
not going to torture myself, because you know what, mullein is a correspondence for numerous deities, for different Sabbats, for different intentions. But guess what? There's always other things that can be substituted in
Hmm.
there. And people are sometimes so married to, it has to be, I saw this in a book and it was done exactly this way. And we have to do this exactly this way because that's the only way to do it. I'm like, you can use cinnamon fragrance in a bath for this, because I don't want you to get third degree chemical burns from dumping a bottle of cinnamon essential oil into your bath, because I also
And
take safety into consideration.
and also bearing in mind that all of those books that say it has to absolutely be cinnamon, and all those people saying it absolutely has to be cinnamon, are almost certainly not using real cinnamon.
Yeah.
Um,
There's bazillion different things you can use as far as correspondences go. And you can, wait, get this, use things symbolically.
yeah.
Like, not everything produces an essential oil. So if you want, like strawberry, well, strawberry doesn't produce an essential oil. You might be able to get some strawberry leaf, which is just the leaves that are kind of ground up, but it's not going to have the strawberry aroma or the look of strawberries if that's what you're going for. Now, you could incorporate using fresh fruit into your ritual. I just can't jam a bunch of strawberries into an oil because it's going to go bad.
Right, because none of
So
the stuff in there is fat soluble anyway.
symbolically, I can use a strawberry fragrance oil as a stand-in for strawberry. It
Well,
doesn't have
and
to be the essential oil.
when people get precious about stuff like that, and I don't like that, I'm lying. I like to be judgy sometimes. Um,
Me too. I'm
that
trying not to be so judgmental, but it's hard.
when someone tells you that you have to absolutely do it this way, it's because they don't understand it. Right?
There's
They
people
don't
that think,
understand what any of the with herbs, for instance, right?
right.
I'm the guy who would probably tell you you have to do it this way because I don't know what the herbs are there for. I don't speak that language. I don't
Mhm.
understand the symbolism. I barely understand the molecules of what's in which molecules, which
Mm-hmm.
molecules are in which plant.
Mm-hmm.
But that's why I buy gen shit.
Because
But
I'm a certified aromatherapist and I know what are monoterpenes, sesquiterpenes, monoterpene alcohols, phenols, and furanocoumarins, and on down the line.
and I failed organic chem twice. So
Because I can tell
um
you, any essential oils, and even herbs to some extent that have furanocoumarins in them, and those are things like angelica root, bergamot, unless it has had the furanocoumarin removed. So for me, when I use bergamot essential oil, I only buy bergamot that has the furanocoumarin removed, because if you put bergamot essential oil on your skin, go out in direct sunlight, you're going to come back inside with some third-degree burns that are ugly as
ooh.
yeah. But go up and look at, like, if not on an empty stomach or not after you've just eaten, because go and look up a Google image search, chemical burns or injuries from essential oils. It will make you
Oh yeah.
think twice.
So we'll add that to the important safety list right after don't boof the goofer dust. And don't put arsenic up your hoo-ha.
Yes. Or crystals.
Yeah.
That's another one. I'm like, oh, you're going to put selenite in there? You do realize that that produces little splintery, fractury things? Yeah, I feel like half my job is telling people not to put things up there, in there, on there. It's just, I'm a glorified kindergarten teacher. I'm like, no, don't put the crayon in your vagina, Susie. Um, Moving on from that note, when I say, we were talking a lot about reasonable expectations, and that is crucial. But the reasonable expectations come from dropping the Hollywood theatrics. So there are
Yeah.
some magicians who have YouTube channels, and they do gorgeous. I'm not naming any names. They do gorgeous theatrically produced videos and rituals, and that's great. But it also gives people an unachievable goal of, well, I'm not doing magic right if it doesn't look like that. That does more harm than good. That is more of an ego manifestation than
Yeah.
bringing the magic of your magic to your audience. It's going, look at how awesome I am at doing magic. Am I actually doing magic, or do I just have 400 candles burning in a room and whatnot?
Yeah, your magic doesn't have to be pretty. In fact,
Like,
I
I'm sorry,
will,
like, a lot of magic is really fucking boring to watch, because I've been
yeah,
trying to include some ritual stuff, especially for like the Goetia pathworking and the Tamarin gates. I'm like, I'm watching this. I'm like, oh my, like, I edit so much out because it's literally just me sitting there.
yes,
I'm
exactly.
like, there's the mental, like we talked earlier, the mental part of magic is the most crucial part of magic. It's not the fancy candles. It's not your, custom athame and your, deer jawbone wand. Not that I have a deer jawbone wand, because I totally do, because it looked like the first blade from Supernatural.
So, there's uh so like my ceremonial magic, right?
Hmm.
Um it
Like, I'm
doesn't
sorry,
look.
I laugh when I watch Golden Dawn ceremonial magic
Oh
videos,
yeah.
because that's just some cheesy crap. No offense
You
to anyone
know,
that's in that. Like, that's just my opinion of it. Like, it's just really like,
like
still doing this.
if I filmed like one of my really elaborate rituals, and I don't do them up all the time. Like
No.
I do them up and do like the full blown thing the first time I work with the spirit, or if there's some
I'm
major
doing
thing that I'm
some major working. So, like, when
right.
I've been doing the Goetia stuff, I've been because part of it is building a ritual around that and doing invocations and stuff like that. So,
What you're gonna see if I videotape that is you're gonna see me wearing pretty much what I'm wearing now.
yeah.
And you're gonna see me wave my hands around for and say some things for about 15-20 minutes, and then it's going to be 3 hours of me lying down or sitting down and occasionally scribbling like crazy in a book. Just
Yeah, it's always funny if I do a video of it when I like phase out and like just start like random channeling babbling. I'm just like, "Blah, blah, blah, blah."
about the creeper.
What's that?
About the crimper? I'm never
Yes.
gonna let you forget the crimper.
No. I still have that crimper. I haven't used it in like 20 years, and I don't know if it still works. I'm gonna crimp my hair for my next video. Provided I can find the crimper, because I moved and I don't know where everything is. Like, I haven't had a need to use the crimper, so I don't
Was
know
that
where I put it.
salvia?
What?
Was that salvia?
Yeah, it was doing the Salvia divinorum.
I wasn't sure if it was salvia or datura.
Yeah. But so yeah, like going back to the Hollywood theatrics, like just accept that your magic is not going to look like Harry Potter. I'm sorry, it's just not.
It's not.
And it's perfectly fine. Don't set yourself You're going to set yourself up to fail if you do not deviate from tradition and you're just stuck with the blinders on. Nope, it has to be done this way, only this way. There's no other way to do it. This is the only way to do it. You're going to fail.
They're traditions, they're not laws.
Yeah. Your ancestors aren't going to come and, haunt your ass because, you did something differently than they did. Because guess what? We live in an entirely different time period than our ancestors did. I mean, even in my lived experiences, every decade, life is very different. My life in the 90s is very different than my life in the early 2000s, 2010s, and now the cluster of 2020s. Are going to set yourself up to fail if you refuse to break from tradition, refuse to use substitutions, and are expecting this to be a Hollywood spectacular. If you want your magic to be like that, it's just going to be all for show. It's yes, there's the witchy aesthetic. I have a witchy aesthetic, but that's not the part and parcel of my practice. It's just because I like pretty things and have my house decorated well. That's not my magic practice, though, of just having pretty shit in my house.
And in fairness, having an aesthetic and incorporating that aesthetic into your magical work is absolutely appropriate. It is actually something you should be doing.
Oh, absolutely. I agree. I'm just saying, if it's all aesthetic and nothing else, then it's all aesthetic and nothing else. So it's just that the Hollywood of it all is what really trips people up in managing their expectations, because suddenly they think that, well, I bought this oil, so well, I didn't get my dream lover in the 32 seconds I've owned this oil, so I want a refund. I'm like, do you know how magic works? Like, sometimes things take like, when people are like, well, how long does it take for this to work? I'm like, I don't know. I'm not going to tell you, because you're going to come back and say, well, you told me this would work in 8 hours and it took 8 weeks and I want my money back. I've had things work in 30 minutes. I've had things never work. So it's somewhere between now and never, there's your magical, timeline.
And
yes, I agree. So if it's not working, it's time to change, pivot, and, take a new approach. And sometimes you might have to tear everything back down to build it back up. Like for me, I give this example in my wealth and money magic. I was focused on financial stability. Well, okay. But the problem is I was just kind of treading water. I was financially stable for the most part, but I wasn't getting anywhere beyond that. I had to shift my focus and my practice to look towards, okay, the goal is financial freedom. I want to do financial magic to manifest never having to fucking do financial magic again.
Right.
That's what you want to get towards. You want to build towards that goal. Like, yes, there's things that come up and you need, like, I need an extra several $1,000s to pay for my taxes this year. Okay, well, I'll do some money to, I'll do some manifestation around specific targeted things, because that's been very successful for me. Like, I've had probably in the past 3 or 4 years over $100,000 in debt erased. Not that I paid off entirely. That was forgiven. Whether it was my student loans, whether it was having medical debt written off, whether it was, any number of things, I was able to manifest that. So,
and that's also very individual, so like in terms of practical manifestation magic, last, I don't know, couple year or two, I barely do any of that stuff now, because it's you reach a certain point where you're doing the work,
Mm-hmm.
the greater work, and I don't have to worry about, because of the way I did it. So the way I did that stuff, the practical enchantment generally was I did it through goetic spirits. And the way I always did that was I didn't do a ritual to ask Fornius for something. I did a ritual to establish a relationship with Fornius and then asked for something down the road, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so now it's at the point where and I didn't do all 72. I should probably do all 72 at some point, but
Well, I definitely recommend S. Conley's 76-week Goetia workbook,
yeah,
or Goetia book, and the workbook for it.
that some
It just
version
gives
of
you a
that is probably where I'll
structure,
do.
like a repeatable process to go
Yeah.
through working with all of them.
But at a certain point, and this is a big inside tip, right?
Mhm.
If you do this work, um, anybody out there is um every time after the first ritual, the end of the first ritual, that sort of get to know you, first date type thing, right? Um, I would always, um, after giving the spirit license to depart, um, would invite them to send a familiar spirit. So
Gotcha.
everyone I have worked with, I've got a familiar spirit floating around somewhere in my
Mhm.
general vicinity doing that stuff for me, right?
Yeah,
Delegate.
I need to work with that more, the familiar spirit type thing. That's something for me, like, I just sort of there's occasionally areas where I just kinda go bloop and gloss over it.
Yeah, it's funny because when that's how I know sometimes when, like, if I take an elixir or a flying ointment, that's the first sign that it's definitely kicked in and I'm ready to start doing the magic is I can start seeing them.
Mhm.
As opposed to just vague idea of, well, they're around here somewhere.
Yeah. So the next kind of area, now that we've kind of recapped a little bit of that, beginning stages of doing the work.
Do the work.
And so the first thing that I want to talk about here is, why are you doing magic? Is it just to get stuff, or for spiritual growth, or a combination of both? Should be a combination of both. You should be working with spirits to work on your spiritual awakening, your growth, your personal gnosis. And because that part for me is way more, like, I get so much more out of that than I do from doing rituals or asking them, to be my spiritual piggy bank. I get more out of meditating with,
Oh, yeah.
a spirit than I do of sitting in front of my altar performing, an hour-long ritual.
Well, and that's where your power comes from anyway. Like,
Yeah.
that other stuff isn't really gonna work that well until you
Oh,
do at least a
absolutely.
little of that.
Yeah, it's just, I think there's some people that I think the magic spiritual piggy bank takes precedent over spiritual growth.
Mhm.
So, the next point, someone asked me this question recently, is finding and vetting teachers, mentors, and probably loosely, at that point, groups. When it comes to teachers, I mean, everyone has different methodologies of teaching. I would say watch someone's YouTube channel first, look at their content before, you sign up for their Patreon or their teacher teachings or mentorships. If possible, have a one-on-one conversation with them or a
Mhm.
consultation to see if it's a good fit, because not everyone is a good fit. And that's okay. Like, I have
That's
I
fine.
there's ways that I learn better, and there's ways that I don't. If you're the type of teacher who's gonna come and scream at me and tell me I'm stupid because I didn't do something right, I'm probably just going to not continue with that.
And
Um,
I'll
it's
give
the
you
approach.
the giant red flag right now, okay? Whether it's a teacher or someone who's offering to do, um, a magic ritual for you. Um, Beware of anyone who makes guarantee the more certain they sound, the more full of
Yes.
crap they are.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. This will change your life. This is bulletproof, blah, 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 guaranteed result. You're lying.
Right.
At that
And
point, you're just fitting the snake oil salesman role,
yes.
and giving the rest of us a bad name to boot. And oftentimes, you'll find with those some of those rituals, I'm like, I'm gonna pay $1,000 for what now?
Yeah.
I've done it. I've done it. I'm not casting aspersions without experience here. We live and learn by our trials and errors and mistakes, and we try to convey some of that information to you. So hey, you don't end up following snake oil salesman number two, or getting fleeced out of money and getting
Mhm.
nothing for it, or someone's teaching that like, and I know this is going to sound terribly ageist. You're 18 years old. You're not an expert on anything. You might be a great voice, though, for, the newer generation, people just getting into witchcraft. You're not an expert. And I know
Mhm.
my 18-year-old self would have been like,
Oh yeah.
that.
No.
That's just how it is. And looking back to when I was 18, I didn't know shit. I had a lot of wisdom, and there's things I look back and I wrote. I'm like, hey, you were pretty on point there, but I was not an expert in something. Now, that's not saying to silence anyone's voices under a particular age. I'm just saying I probably wouldn't pick a mentor who is half my age at this point, because lived experience counts for a lot.
Oh yeah.
And you have barely most people have barely lived by the time they're 18.
Especially these days. These kids these days are boring.
Yeah, they don't make like team dance clubs anymore. Like I'm so sad about that. Like I've been clubbing since I was like 14. And it's like all the things we used to do growing up. Like I was so sad when I went to Perkins on a Saturday night on the way back from something, and like we were literally the only people there. I'm like, that back in the day, 30 years ago, that place, you would have been waiting for a table.
Mhm.
All your friends would have been there. So it's very different. So the lived experiences that our generation, where Gen X has, is very different than, like, I talk to millennials sometimes. There's not a huge age difference there, depending on when they were born, but like completely grown up on entirely different planets.
Oh yeah.
And Zoomers, it's and I don't have anything. I mean, I will make fun of the younger generations because as you get older, it's a privilege. But
Yep.
us Gen Xers managed to be the generation everyone fucking hates.
Yep.
We got all the crap from the boomers and the silent generation, because those were our parents and grandparents, and now the millennials and Zoomers don't like us either. So they
They
don't really
hate
know
us.
what to do. Oh, they don't know what to do with us because we're a little too real, a little too like, we're just gonna actually say the thing and suck it up, buttercup,
Yep.
because we were just raised differently, and we have different life experiences, so that goes into it. I and human ego is a thing. Like, I mean, I would have told you at 18, fuck you, I know all
Yep.
everything and blah blah blah, and I'm wise and I'm an expert. Sit down, 18-year-old Jen. Like, I look back now at those instances and it's like, ugh, I was that person,
If
wasn't I? Mhm.
if you're not like that, it's like I think it was Churchill who used to talk about that if you're not if you're not a liberal below the age of 30, you have no heart, and if you're not a conservative above the age of 40, you have no brain. You know, not that I agree, but if you aren't like that, exactly that punk kid at 18 who nobody can tell anything to,
Yeah.
there's something wrong with you. And if you aren't, the get the hell off my lawn at 48, there's something wrong with you.
Right. And the same thing goes towards, when you look at like the generations that are older than us and stuff, it's like, yes, they've got the wisdom of experience, of the life experience, and can give you a excellent, social like generational perspectives on things. Like, I love talking to someone and finding out about what witchcraft was like in the 1960s, because that wasn't my lived experiences.
Mhm.
But the only danger there that is the older you get, the more detached you become from current things. And like I even feel that as at 48. Sometimes I just look at the like things going on, I'm just like, "Oh, is this shit?" You know?
With
Like,
the TikToks and the hex and the moon and the
yes, everyone's literally
whatever the
offended
kids are
by
doing these days.
everything and just want to maliciously cancel everyone because I don't know.
I don't
People,
understand.
humans, ugh, can't like, can't stand the things. Anyways, moving on from that. So going back a little bit to finding teachers, mentors, groups. Not everyone like I not for nothing. I probably would not be a great teacher, just because high neurodivergent. It takes a lot for me to be able to sit down and really concentrate on something to teach you how to do it. I could probably do it making a video series or something, but I don't know that I would necessarily translate well to being a good live teacher in that sense. But the thing here is learn from the teachers, but take what they're teaching, take what works for you, incorporate that into your practice, and if it
Yep,
doesn't work for you, leave it.
yep. When I'm teaching, you'll the thing you will never hear me say is, "This is what you should do." What you
Mhm.
will hear me say is, "This is what I do,
Yeah.
and this is why I do what I do,"
Yeah.
and maybe
So
take a look
leading
at
by
that.
example. So I would also highly recommend, especially in this day and age, vetting those groups really and people really well. Ask around in the communities, join a Facebook group, follow YouTube channels, social media, all that. Get a good feeling for this because if you do get any kind of, intuitive spidey sense tingles, or you're seeing there's a whole slew of, okay, this person is literally in, legal battles with every single person they've ever met, or there's constant drama following them around, or they're
En masse.
on, yeah, the magicians of the world unite, and or they are part of a legitimate cult, or trying to think how to put this and not and skirt the shadow banning of it all. Not literal Yahtzees, or an organization that espouses violence via terrorism. I'm talking about groups like the Joy of Satan and Order of Nine Angles.
Yeah, oh,
I would say
yeah.
they might have some materials that are legitimate, that are decent, whatever. Avoid with caution unless you are a literal Yahtzee or and into that aspect, then hey, that's probably for you. But I wouldn't recommend it for someone just getting into this because there's a lot of extremism in every direction in the occult, and it's not just the dark and spooky left hand path. The toxic positivity that overruns the
Oh
wellness
my
community.
god. Yes.
Like, look at these right now about new age cults, like the twin flames
Oh,
cult
yeah.
and the love is one and all those ones. Watch videos on cults, look at the people or groups or organizations and go, am I watching this cult behavior yo-yo between these two things?
Yeah.
Because when I do watch those cult videos, I can be like, yeah, this person really does kind of have that cult of personality that it's not like they formed this, super secret cult and that was their intention to be malevolent. But it's like sometimes the cult forms around the person
Yep.
and then human ego does its human ego thing. So,
I won't say their name, but I use the example of a certain well-known, very litigious science fiction cult all the time as an example of that started out as a transparent grift,
mhm,
and it it went really, really toxic at exactly the moment that the founder started believing his own bullcrap.
yep.
And
If you know, you know. But yeah, so it's this information is out there, and that brings me to the next topic of it is 2024. There are a bazillion books, podcasts, videos, video courses, websites, blogs, etc. out there on every aspect of magic, unless it's something that is from a closed practice or you have to be initiated at a certain level, because there are things that are kind of, I don't want to say gate kept because it kind of has a negative connotation, but not everyone, especially like I'm talking about in demonolatry practices, like there are certain things that just are not, you're not going to find in a YouTube video, or you might in a book if you buy the book. But that information, like you would have to be initiated or from a bloodline family of demonolators. So, and that's something that varies from practice to practice, but there are resources out there. Hi, we're old. We had to go to bookstores and libraries, and that's all we had. We figured it out. Back in my day, I had to walk
to a university library and use an actual card catalog to find stuff.
Not a digital card catalog.
No.
The thing with the drawers you pulled out and flipped through all the cards to hopefully find what the fuck you were looking for.
And then I had, as a 16-year-old kid, I had to go ask for access to like special collections shit.
This was in reserves. I can't take it out of the library if I want to read it. Yes.
Yeah, we're not saying.
Sometimes you'll find the older generation, like us, we get a little annoyed when people want to be spoon-fed magic and the whole of witchcraft. Especially if we aren't in a role of offering teachings and stuff like that. I'm sorry, I can't teach you witchcraft in like Etsy conversations.
Nope.
I can give you recommendations for books and channels and useful information to follow, but like, I'm sorry, I can't teach you witchcraft by email.
Nope.
And again, this is one of the things that like people will, especially with selling products, if people be like, well, I bought this oil. I want to know the specific spell or ritual you use with this oil. I'm like, I create my products be used by anyone of any skill level in any tradition. Do you work with demons? Okay, so I'll give you how I work with this using working with the demonic divine. Oh, you don't? Oh, okay, well that's all I got. You can take the nuts and bolts of any spell or ritual and kludge them together. You can be like, okay, I'm taking this spell, and instead of working with Lucifer, I'm going to work with Archangel Michael. Or Hecate or whatever. It's fine. But it's hard for me to provide that information because, not for nothing, there's like we were talking about being judgmental earlier. There's a lot of people who are really judgmental towards we're all practicing magic here, but as soon as you're on that dark side of it, you got I'm on a path of light and I only practice light and love and stuff. And I'm like, good for you. I'll refund you now.
Yep.
Because it's like at that point, you're just disrespecting me. Like, okay, well, I don't have to ship you these products because now you're looking down your nose at me because I just work a different practice than you.
Yeah, that's not as bad as the armchairs, but the armchairs are the ones who really drive me nuts. Some of
the love and light people are far more judgmental and than my Christian haters. Yeah.
But
I'm like, and my whole thing is, when the next Inquisition comes, we're all going to be burning together on the same pyre. Doesn't matter if you're love and light and whatnot. You're going to be up there with the rest of us dirty commie Satanists. So,
I will at least have had fun on my way to the auto da fe. How about you?
The thing that I didn't put this in here, and if you've watched my channel for any number of years at this point, it is about finding the balance in light and dark. You cannot exist in total lightness without darkness, and you can't exist in darkness without some elements of light. It's finding that sweet spot in the middle and incorporating the light and the dark and the entire spectrum of color and all the shades of gray that are magic.
Yep.
Mic drop there, but mic drop or mic boop.
Yep. What if, and this is a crazy idea, we applied diversity to our practice?
Well, I never.
Saying.
So what would that look like for you? Like, how would you?
Well,
I think when people think of diversity, they think of, well, I've got to, incorporate something from every culture and thing, and then you end up in weird cultural appropriation miasma and stuff like that.
That's not what I mean.
Okay.
So what I mean is,
I'm just thinking some people will hear the word diversity and,
yes,
and go down that rabbit hole.
So I will give all of you the 3-step plan, right? That this is how this is how I learned magic. This is how I told others to learn magic for many years on Reddit and other places. And this is still what I tell people to do. The very first things you do. Okay. And this process is going to take a year and a day because that's traditional. Okay. The very first thing you do is you're going to go out and you're going to read every book you can get your hands on about this. And this is
keep reading every book you can get your hands on. I read at least 50 books a year.
I have a mild learning disability, okay, that makes it very difficult for me to read at any kind of a sustained pace, okay? I still read a shit ton of books. It's work. And
in today's day and age, there are screen readers available.
Yep.
Some of them don't work all that great, but
I find ways to make it work. I use adaptive technology when I need it. I still have to read the books. So you spend a year. This is all during the first year. The very first thing you do is you read everything you can get your hands on. And when I say diversity, this is what I mean by diversity. I want you to seek out and read the stuff that is different. Like even if you're never going to practice Tantra, go read a book on Tantra, right? Even if you're not going to ever practice Wicca, go read a book on Wicca. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I read books on literally everything.
Yes.
Like, I'm not going to practice voodoo, but I will read about it to educate myself on it.
And also, and this is really important, I especially want you to seek out the stuff that you disagree with. The stuff that you read that you hear about it and you're like, oh, this is bullcrap, right? Read it. That's the stuff you need to read, right?
And I want to bring up a point on this because I was talking about this in another video recently. Is I don't understand this because I've seen these memes popping up through certain factions of friends on Facebook. This is on my personal Facebook and stuff, where there's like some kind of backlash now to anything that is like the devil's advocate. Now, I realize that some people can play the devil's advocate to be an asshole.
Yes.
But I'm sorry, I was taught to exactly that. Reading multiple perspectives, even ones that are just so you don't agree with or are so different or just completely wrong, because you know what, that's going to give you a deeper understanding. Because the problem I see in people not wanting to be the devil's advocate is, here's a thing, this is the thing, this is the company line, we follow this, don't question it, don't look for other results and other things, this is the company line. This is how we feel about this. No playing devil's advocate, no asking too many questions, no, what about or what if and whatnot. No advanced analytical processes. And I try to convey, I'm like, this is kind of problematic. Like, yes, I know that some people can use literally anything as an excuse for bad behavior.
Yes.
So it doesn't mean throw out the entire practice of playing the devil's advocate or
Mhm.
anything that would, like, let's look at a situation, like let's look at something and go, okay, well, why does everyone have a problem with, this? Okay, well, here are the reasons, or okay, so okay, so here's an example. So a touchy subject in occult terms, it often goes around surrounds animal sacrifice. So now my personal opinion is I don't really think it's needed in left-hand path practices. A lot of time it is two things. It's ego manifestation. Well, maybe three things. It's ego manifestation, one, or you're just a sick motherfucker who really likes to do
Yeah.
that shit. And I've seen that. Or tradition, or you're so married to tradition and superstition that you're afraid to move beyond. But to understand those things, you really need to have a deeper understanding and accept multiple perspectives on that subject matter.
You need to read a book from somebody who does that so that you can understand from their perspective why they're doing that.
And
Because
it is
even if
very
you're not going to
different.
do it, okay, so they're doing this because they get X, Y, and Z out of it. Is there a way in my other reading and my other experimentation and practice to get
Mhm.
that X, Y, Z without having to do this thing?
Yeah, I've never had a single spirit I work with be like, "Oh, you gotta go out and start lopping heads off chickens." Like,
And by understanding the historical context,
mhm.
you can come to understand that,
And it's very
oh,
different
wait
from
a
culture
minute,
to culture too.
when the I don't know which one, the black pullet says to go kill a black pullet, okay, which is a chicken,
Yeah.
I think. It's a kind of
Yeah.
chicken. When it's saying that, and it's saying, okay, go kill a black chicken and use its feathers to do this, you were going to go kill a chicken anyway to eat it.
Mhm. Yeah,
It's not
yeah.
telling you to go kill a chicken. It's saying when you go kill your chicken for dinner tonight, save its feathers.
Yes, so when you're going back to some of these grimoire traditions or familial traditions or cultural traditions, say 100 from 100 years ago and beyond, is you were going to kill your chicken that night for dinner. You weren't going to the grocery store to get your little prepackaged thing of chicken. Yeah,
Mm.
it was part of your daily life. It wasn't something that was out of the ordinary or illegal or looked down upon. It was, making the best use of what you were already doing. So,
And
it's kind of like, okay, well, you kill the cow. Now you can make a leather sofa and feed your family and, have milk and whatever.
for the sake of completeness, I'll give the other two steps. So read everything you can get your hands on. Okay. As you are reading, anytime you come across a practical exercise or a ritual or anything that looks like something you feel like you could manage to do it.
Hmm.
And then the third thing is write it all down. Write it
Yeah, I suck
all
at that
down.
part.
Right. Nobody and everybody fucks up that third point, but write it down because the difference between science and screwing around is writing it down.
Hmm.
And I don't know a single working magician anywhere that doesn't say, "Man, I wish I had written more down." Right?
Yeah, yeah. I
We
just think
all
for
have
me,
that
like,
regret in common.
N
Is
I
is
I'm starting to figure out how to write a book, and I'm realizing that I don't have a book to work from to write a book. I'm gonna have to sit here and watch all my YouTube videos and, get like a speech to text kind of editor thing so I can take the content from the videos and then put it into a book format and expound upon it further.
Yep.
So, um yeah, I agree with that. Read as much as you can. It
And the
always is. I
thing,
always
like,
find it a little confounding when there's occultists out there who's like, "Oh, I don't read other occultists' work." I'm like, "But why?" Because and I get it from one perspective. You don't want to be copying that person's work. But I will tell you from this experience here, like, I love S. Conley's work, and if I hadn't read her work, the way I think is so similar to the way she does and the way she writes. I would literally be writing the same shit and not realizing it.
Yep.
So I have this as a frame of reference that I can, guess what, appropriately reference it and credit where needed.
This has literally happened with me and Bill Duvendeck over and over again. I get this really great idea for a book and sit down to write it. That Bill wrote it last year.
Yeah, I'm like that with S. Conley. I'm like, I think you wrote a book on this, didn't you? But yeah, so that's the
And
thing.
we're not saying to go out and get like a graduate level education in this, right? Although you can.
Rome wasn't built in a day, you know.
We're not saying read all the books, but we are saying read a book.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're not,
because it gives you the big picture of things. You understand the history or cultural applications, and that's one of the things I find really it's a struggle in this day and age of witchcraft, especially when we go into hot button topics like closed practices and cultural appropriation, because so much of it comes in like a whisper down the alley purple monkey dishwasher that's missing critical key factors as to why this is or isn't a closed practice, or if this then that. Like, sure, maybe, for practice, you can look like this and practice an African traditional religion if you're appropriately initiated into it. I don't recommend dabbling in voodoo like that. That's one of the things, like with the Haitian voodoo course that Become a Living God did. Like, that is cultural appropriation nonsense. That is something that is problematic. And it was done. And what makes it even more problematic is that it was done with, I guess, a Haitian voodoo priest, who they wrote the book with. But now this is where learning more information. So you would think that, oh, well, he worked with, he has permission to do this. He worked with, a voodoo priest.
vows were broken.
The problem is that particular voodoo priest is not at all well regarded within that community, within ATR communities. All that person is,
no,
an egregious.
Like, the primary reason for which being that he broke vows.
Yes. And if you are in a tradition that has initiated secrets and vows and stuff like that, making a course where, because it was, the whole premise of that was to, take the religious aspect out of voodoo and make it an occult practice, which, okay, fine. But it was done in a terrible way. And, I try to, look at it from different perspectives. So when I read the book that E.A. Quetting did, The Spider and the Green Butterfly or something like that. What?
Yeah, I
didn't read the whole thing, but I'm like, wow, this is actually really beautifully written and stuff and thoughtful and at least the parts that I were respectful and stuff. So, and it's like a smoke screen though, because it's like that kind of clouded the other information there of, doing the due diligence on the voodoo priest he worked with, who ended up being a total, breaking vows and is not well regarded within those communities. So
gatekeeping has come up a couple of times now, so I'm gonna give my opinion on gatekeeping. I used to be very, very I'm the hacker generation, right? Information wants to be free.
but not everyone is capable of handling that information.
I have learned the hard way that there are some things that I do that I'm not going to tell other people how to do.
Right.
I'm just not.
Because there is a part of the practice that is, this is my personal spiritual journey. You don't get to control what I think or what I do. I'm more worried about pissing off the spirit world than bruised human egos.
Well, and for me, it's from the perspective of it's not even that. It's from the perspective of someone could hurt themselves with this.
Yeah,
I'm not going to go full Tibetan Buddhist
yeah.
and
There are
basically
things you
say,
can dabble in that will fuck your shit
yeah,
up. I've been there.
yeah. I'm not going to go full Tibetan Buddhist and say you have to go meditate and be a monk for 20 years before we'll even begin to give you the real
Mhm.
shit.
Or pay $400,000 to get your that science
Yeah,
fiction cults, whatever their levels and
yes.
mastery stuff is. So yes,
Um, but I have done stuff that you can absolutely blow yourself up with because I have blown myself up with it. Um,
same, same.
and there is definitely something to be said for now some stuff. I'm still a firm believer in the best initiation test there is.
Hmm.
um, is to give somebody a string of firecrackers and then count their fingers in the morning.
Right.
Um,
And it's some of it, like, I think of it in like, and this is something that I'm still kind of trying to like think about on a bigger term, is when we look at, and no one has an answer to this. Were you male in every single one of your uh past lives? Were you
no,
of the same race? Were you of the same religion? Did you live in the same country, in the same part of the world?
mm, well,
So,
no,
in every single past life. So, thinking about that, there are things that carry over karmically and things that carry over in your interests. Like, am I have a slightly more predilection towards things like Reiki because my parents both have some East Asian ancestry? Or that you're interested in something, like my dad loves, Japanese tea ceremonies. Is there something in his ancestry, in his soul, that's calling him towards that?
mm,
Like, people, I sometimes don't think about it in like those big terms like that. And I realize it's big, but when you're working with spirits, you're working with divine intelligences that transcend, gender and sexuality and all of that.
so let me give you a real world example from where I'm at, right?
And there's a lot of different types of spirits, so I can't speak for them all. Like, I don't work with the fae. you know.
So I live in Appalachia,
Mhm.
and
I'm Appalachia adjacent.
yes,
Actually, I
the
guess technically I'm in Appalachia.
well,
Well, the
no,
Appalachian Mountains kind of go up through.
well, sort of.
I
You're
mean, where I'm
close.
at now is probably a little more Appalachian leaning than Philadelphia, but
Like Harrisburg's kind of the edge. Um, but so these mountains and the land spirits of these mountains
mhm,
are 500 million years old. Okay.
yes.
They were something like 20 million years old when the first terrestrial plants showed up.
Mhm,
Okay. Now, my settler ancestors came here in 1758. The the native Americans that they displaced had probably been here 10 to 12,000 years, let's say.
mhm.
Okay. Now, is 10,000 years a lot longer than 300? Not even 250? Oh yeah. Um are either of those numbers even a drop in the bucket compared to 500 million?
Mhm.
And it's like Steve Shell says in the very first episode of Old Gods of Appalachia. We did
Mhm.
not claim these mountains. They claimed us.
Hmm.
You know,
That's an interesting
and
perspective on it.
that's that's the thing. And the thing is that um the land spirits of Appalachia are by far the most alien things I have ever worked with. Like they think of mammals as what are these new things?
Yeah, the land spirits up here now where I'm at in the Lehigh Valley are very different than the
Yeah.
land spirits of Philadelphia. Holy like they all are just like following me home. Like I get like there's times where I've been like my house is overrun with like all these different like land spirits and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And it was interesting because I was driving and I was thinking about this, and it was like I got this kind of communication from the land spirits to like, we saw your birth here. You're part of us,
Mhm.
and that's why, we are welcoming you home. It was just very like,
And it's the thing with the ancestor thing, right? Is this is not what I do. Like
mm,
I'm not into the whole Norse Germanic thing, but
yeah,
very early on in my practice, in no uncertain terms, I had an ancestor in Odin show up and hand me the runes like, you're doing this, right? Because on the one hand, it's like, well, I mean, I'm fifth generation American. Like my grandfather didn't even speak German,
hmm
you know? And it's like, yeah, but what's 100 years here versus, living in the same, pretty much the same 50-mile radius around what is now Munich, um, going back to at least the time of Christ and
yeah.
probably earlier than that.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things like I've been really thinking about. I'm trying to figure out how to like posit it into a video that doesn't like offend literally everyone ever. But it's yeah, it's kind of like I think of it like look at like I did 23andMe about almost 10 years ago at this point. It was a Christmas gift and stuff like that. But it's like when I look at the ancestry map of the fact that I have distant relatives, in almost every state in the United States, in Eastern Europe, Canada, you know, all over the place. And I sit there and think and look at it, I'm like, we're more connected than disconnected. We just don't realize it. So, I guess so. I think, where we're at, like kind of talking about this is all of this comes to one key thing, and that is taking multiple perspectives into account, even ones you don't agree with, even ones you don't understand, just to have that in there as part of, if you want to understand why something is cultural appropriation, rather than just listen to someone go, oh, this is cultural appropriation doing this, learn why. Or, a lot of times when you learn that is someone's got one tiny little piece of information because someone told them XYZ is cultural appropriation, and they don't know the whole background of it. Like anytime you use the word shamanism, someone is going to come back at you with cultural appropriation. Because, and I've pointed this out in numerous conversations to which it was met with, oh, I didn't know that was a thing. The vast majority, and this is not to say that there aren't people who do icky, culturally appropriative things. There are. It's not just everyone. Not everyone who uses the word shamanism is being cultural appropriative. And the reason for that being, most of what you see as shamanism in Western esoteric traditions and the New Age and the occult comes from a practice that was developed by a cultural anthropologist, Michael Harner, as well as people like Sandra Ingerman and Lynn Roberts,
Is
called
that core
core
shamanism?
shamanism.
Yeah.
And what that was is they looked at, as anthropologists, they had access to do this. And this was, back in like I would say like between the 1940s and 1960s or 70s, is they looked at every single shamanic culture around the globe and pulled out the core elements that were not cultural or religious specific,
Mhm.
thereby removing the cultural appropriative elements of it. Shamanic drumming is a core element of shamanic practices around the world. Stylistically, it may change. Norse drumming might be different than South American drumming.
Very different.
So, And the same with journeying, working with the upper world, the lower world, working with power animals, and all of that. Those are things that are inherent in all different shamanic cultures. And if we want to look at the etymology of the word shaman or shamanism, it comes from Siberian shamans. And now again, this kind of touches a little bit upon, colonialism and all of that. But when the Europeans went into, the Americas and South Americas, and I guess Central Americas or Mesoamerica, that was the word they had for the healers from these cultures. So they called them shamans. Whereas you'll see more like in, South American ones like curanderos or ayahuasqueros and things like that. They've got their own words for it. So you can take elements of core shamanism and develop and put them into your practice and not have it be icky cultural appropriation.
Yes. And I would also say,
but there's a fine line.
And if I, as white guy, completely unconnected to a culture, am not allowed to tell you that it's okay for you to do XYZ practice from some culture that I am not connected to in any way. And I think that is a perfectly appropriate thing to say, that I, as someone who is not in any way connected, let's take the racial and colonial issues out of it entirely. Okay. If I, as a person of Bavarian descent, not allowed to tell you that you can or can't practice some traditional Russian folk magic because I'm not Russian. I don't, right? And no matter how many books I've read on the topic or how much I may know about it, it is simply inappropriate for me as someone who is not Russian to tell you not to do, that you can do Russian folk magic. Okay. And I think all of that is perfectly appropriate, a perfectly appropriate view to have. I don't know that I necessarily agree 100%, but let's assume that is.
Well, sometimes it's also the connection to it. Like, I don't feel any connection to Norse heathenry. Like, I'm not. I mean, I have some Scandinavian ancestry, but I don't feel a deep connection to it. So it's not something that I'm probably going to explore any further than.
My point is, if it is inappropriate for me to tell, for any reason, for me to tell you that you can do it, it is also inappropriate for me to tell you that you can't do it. Okay, and just because someone tells you you can't do something, at a minimum, I would try to find someone from within that culture who is educated on this topic and ask them. And not in a challenging way. Like,
well, I want to do this and you should let me do this, because there was a particular person who got rather butthurt by walking onto a reservation and, demanding to be taught shamanism and being rejected. So those people are now racist because they rejected him from becoming, being taught shamanic ways. That's some bullshit.
Yes. Don't be that guy.
Don't be that guy in every possible way. Don't be that guy.
Because here's the thing, I in the rare circumstances where I have run into this personally. All right, I'm going to give a practical example. I got a ration of crap from someone because I work with Lilith and I'm not Jewish. I still work with Lilith, and I made this argument with this person, but again, we were having a genuine dialogue with one another.
Right. And that's the thing. It's like being able to have a dialogue and conversation about these big, heavy, tough topics becomes harder and harder because so many people don't want to talk about it or are afraid of talking about it because, not for nothing, you say the wrong thing and you're canceled, or have a differing opinion of something or ask a question and suddenly you're canceled because you looked at a different perspective on something.
Where we arrived at is I agree with her 100%. It would be absolutely inappropriate for me to practice Jewish folk magic involving Lilith when I am not
Yeah,
Jewish.
yeah,
However, that's not what I'm doing,
right.
right? I am engaging with a spirit that is acknowledged within the Talmud as existing alongside first wife of Adam, Lilith, which is a much
Hmm.
older Lilith that probably predates even, Inanna and Ishtar.
Hmm.
As the guy on Esoterica said, if you go back to say Babylon in 3500 BC and you ask about Yahweh or you ask about anything, anything that we would recognize as part of, you know, ancient Near Eastern mythology or religious practice, they would have no idea what the hell you're talking about. But if the word Lilith came out of your mouth, you would see the color drain from their faces. They would know
Hmm.
exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. And there's some things that like I ran into this when I started working with Santa Morte, because that to me kind of she kept coming up for me in like readings and healing stuff I was doing for other people. She just was there. Like she kept being
Mhm.
there. And I was always apprehensive to work with her because of, cultural appropriation, closed practice implications. But it's like, as I started doing more research for her, there are two ways to work with Santa Muerte. You can work with her as a Mexican Catholic. I'm not a Mexican, was raised Catholic though. I don't particularly while I know the Catholic prayers by heart, because I went to Catholic school, I don't like to work with her in that way. Now, there's the more occult way of working with her that is not specific to the Mexican folk magic Catholicism way. Two
Well,
entirely different
I
practices.
asked an actual Bruja about this when I started
Mhm,
working with Santa Muerte. Um, and she pointed out two things to me. First of all, uh, and I knew this because I was a seminarian. I was baptized.
mhm.
I got wet, and they said, "In the name of the Father and Son and the Holy Spirit." So, according to the rules of the Catholic Church, I am Catholic. I'm just in schism, right? And two, Santa Muerte's for everybody. You know why?
Death is
Everybody
universal.
dies.
Yep, that's the
Everybody
one
dies.
thing we all have in common: death.
You
We
know,
were born, we lived,
literal,
we die.
and as the way this Bruja explained to me, that's literally the entire point. She doesn't turn away the prostitutes or the gangsters for the
Yeah,
same reason she doesn't turn away the federales or anybody else.
yeah.
Everybody dies, and when people die, they deserve a little bit of dignity and
And working with her, like, I mean, the things that she taught, especially when I was in, and this will kind of segue a little bit into some of the other things we're going to talk about on the mental health side, is when I was in the throes of like that really deep, dark depression a couple years ago, literally begging her, like, please take me.
Mhm.
Like, I'm done.
Um,
Unalive us.
I had my first unaliving thought
Hmm.
when I was 6 years old, and the thing about working with Santa Muerte that I discovered very, very early on was that this was not new. This was not a new spirit for me to be working with. It's a different expression,
Yeah,
but I've had the low key love affair going on with her since I was a little kid.
same.
So,
So, yeah, I mean, it's taking those multiple perspectives into account, understanding the nuance of very heavy topics like the cultural appropriation and closed practices. And I have deep respect for that. But
mhm,
also, we need to take one thing into account, because this is equally problematic, is no group of people, culture, anything is a monolith. You are
nope.
going to, and treating them as such is problematic.
Oh yeah.
I like to learn again multiple perspectives. I'm not just going to take the one person says nope as canon. Now, if everyone says nope and here's the reason why, okay, we've got a reason. Um, yeah. So I
You
think
don't have
it's
to have
hard.
graduate level education, but you do
Yeah,
need to have, I would say, a college level ability to read and think critically.
think critically is the key there, because that is missing a lot.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say, I'm just kind of looking at my notes a little bit, on the do the work part of it, is listening to advice. And sometimes if someone no is a legit answer. Like
Mhm.
I've had client consultations where what they are wanting is so convoluted, complicated that it's like there's a 0.01% chance this might work if, 100 different mundane things line up perfectly. Chances are this you need to adjust your expectations of what is possible and what is not. And accept that if someone says, yeah, this probably isn't going to work, that it's probably not going to work. Because you also
Mhm.
find the type of clients that will just shop their bullshit to every single
Oh, yeah.
occultist until one bites. We talk, we know. It's kind of like, okay, yeah, I'll get right on that.
And even when we don't talk, we know, because if you've gone to like 8 different people to get readings and 4 to get rituals done on something, and now you're coming to ask me about it and I do a
Yeah.
reading for you,
Yeah.
I'm
I
gonna
mean,
know before I pull the first card.
yeah, and not for nothing, the vast majority of readings and channelings and stuff I do are to find out if other rituals and spells have actually been done by practitioners. Did they actually do the spell? Did it work? And I will admit this one thing. I have no problem with getting a second opinion on something. So if
No,
I have
absolutely not.
if I have a tarot
Please do.
reading and there's something that comes up that's very unexpected, out of the ordinary, I might go at I have different readers for things. Like I've
Mhm.
got my emergency reader, I've got, some cold readers, like ones that know me but don't know the inner workings of my life, because that can influence a reading. Is if someone knows every single thing that is going on in your life, that's going to influence them, because you're going to start getting more opinion based readings than actual channeled readings. So, you know, going to someone like for a cold read to kind of be like, I want to verify, this information. So that I don't have a problem with. I
That's
don't
all.
need 7 or 8 tarot readings within a week for the exact same thing.
And some point, I'm sure we'll have to do a video on this. I will explain all the technical reasons for why that's a bad idea. But for technical magical reasons, it's a really bad idea. And the
Yeah.
short form of that is every time you do a reading or you do a ritual, you're changing the situation.
Yeah.
And eventually and when I say I'm going to know before I pull the first card, it's because it's the very first thing I do is I try to connect to you energetically when I'm doing a reading for you, and I can feel it. It's like static on an old console television, right? There's
Mhm.
just this zone of chaos
Yeah.
around you. And the
Yeah.
and the advice I give people in those situations is you need to get up and walk away from this for 6 weeks. All
Yeah,
right.
and if you're working with spirits, you can piss off the spirit world. I've done it myself, because back when I first started working with Santa Muerte, I was going through a shitty breakup and was doing all the typical let's get back with your shitty ex spell, kind of stuff. And but I was throwing every day. I was doing something,
Mm.
and I went to my emergency tarot reader, and she's like, "So you're working with Santa Muerte, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "You're doing a lot of rituals?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, She's like, "Stop." Because basically Santa Muerte was like, "You asked me for this already. Stop. Stop asking for the same thing every single day."
Mm.
And,
Yeah, eventually the
if you break
spirits will roll up
promises,
a
like, I
newspaper
pissed
and just go,
Lucifer off for a really long time on that specific thing, because
"Mm."
my promise I made to Lucifer going into that relationship was not to lose myself in that relationship and have it destroy me. And guess what? I didn't do.
And valuable life lessons were learned.
Yes. So, it just, yeah, like you can. Um, so listen to the advice. No is a legitimate answer. Like there was another time with, it was maybe a little over a year, like a year and a half ago. And I think I had specifically instructed the spirit world. I'm like, Do not allow me to get relationship related tarot readings. And man, did I try to work my way around that one. And literally Bonnie sat there. She's like, the cards are not giving me anything. There's nothing. Like, she's a astute psychic medium, amazing tarot. She's like, nope. She's like, they got nothing for you. Because, I was trying my damnedest to work around a self-imposed boundary and limitation. And the spirit world was like, no. So I could have gone on down the line through every tarot reader I know to try to get that answer, which probably would have. I don't want to be given the answers of like someone blowing smoke up your ass or just telling you what you want to hear, because sometimes that will happen. And that's why I tend to, if I want a second opinion reading, I go to someone who doesn't know all my bullshit.
Yeah, that's good.
So, and I guess the next one, and this kind of bounces on, some of the ritual stuff, is, are you cursed, or is there just mundane bullshit going on in your life? And that's a tough one, because as you get more and more experienced, you can start to sense when something is like, if you do astral travel work, I mean, you're going to get astral parasites and sludge attached to you. It's not someone. What's that?
I call them astral herpes.
Astral herpes, yes. I mean, so it's not necessarily a case of someone lobbing curses at you. You're just picking up stuff on the astral realm and things like that. Or, you've got negative energy attachments. And those could just come from, bullshit people you have to deal with in the course of your day. So, but again, a lot of times people, it's finding the magical reasons for mundane bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's like, oh, well, I can't get anywhere in life because, generational curse. Yes, my family has a generational curse. I'm like, that one particularly gets overplayed a lot. So,
well, and the thing is that, what did I say about in your temple, your God, right? The reason I key in on that in banishing is, once you grok that, it doesn't matter what the curse is, who put it there, none of that matters. You can just stop worrying about that, because you have just made for yourself an irrevocable, 100% effective get out of jail free card on every possible curse that somebody can throw at you. Right. So once I grok that, I don't have to worry about that. When we had our witch drama situation, I didn't have to worry about any of that. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think some people have some natural resistance to curse work, or certain things only affect them versus other. Like, there's only very specific things that will that'll hit me. And most of them, honestly, just get filed under petty bullshit annoyances. It was just like, oh, I stubbed my toe. You got me there. Real good. I had a headache.
Witch wars, we had one that, like, okay, I'm going to do a little extra on this guy. And the reason I wanted to do a little extra on this guy was because I felt the need to teach him a lesson. So, and I did.
I don't think he learned the lesson, but,
Well,
I still would occasionally, like, years later, be like, well, I'm cursing someone else. I'll just throw in a little curse on him as well, just to, some people deserve it. Zero regrets on that one.
It's perfectly appropriate to say a little blessing for someone that you loved and knew once upon a time and lost contact with them. The reverse is true.
Yeah.
If someone's an asshole and they're still an asshole, there's nothing wrong with just,
here's a little reminder, you're still an asshole. Yeah. So I think, where I want to kind of go with, as we're wrapping up, is I think the next kind of cluster to talk about is safety when it comes to all of this, working with spirits, magic, etc. And there are different components that I think will impact that. And the biggest one I find is fear. A lot of people still have a lot of superstitions, a lot of fear. That's why, like, what I was finding problematic about a lot, as we talked earlier, about like the goetic rituals, is that all of these seem to have like come from places where people were afraid of working with demons. I'm like, if you're afraid of working with demons, why are you working with demons?
Mhm.
It's probably not for you. And
There
there's
is,
some people who are seasoned working with on the left-hand path with this that still like think demons are a thing to be feared. And I they can be. Anything can be a thing to be feared. Your fuzzy little, princess pussycat could also tear your face off if they want. It's
well,
how you
and
approach things. If you approach something with fear, like think about if you're afraid of dogs and you are, a dog walks in the room and you're like, that dog is more likely to attack you based on, not
mhm,
only the chemical pheromones you're releasing, but the way you're acting is
mhm,
going to I think it was I forget who I was working, maybe at Gary's. It was like, "If you approach us with fear, we will give you something to fear."
mhm. Well, and
So, you need to do the work to not be approaching them with fear.
the I will say as somebody who spent, 40 years, in the church, good little Christian boy, um, I say this a lot, but the reason that basically what I'm doing is an attempt. It's not tantra. It's something like tantra. I'm
Mhm,
taking techniques from tantra, and I'm recontextualizing them with a left hand path Western symbol set. And why
mhm,
am I doing that? Why am I going through all this work of doing this with, Lilith and Lucifer instead of like Shiva and Kali? Well,
mhm,
because I grew up in one of those contexts and not the other one. And so I can sit here from now until doomsday and read everything there is to read about Hindu Tantra.
mhm.
Kali and Shiva will never have the emotional gut punch that Lilith and Lucifer is. That transgressive nature of what we're doing,
Mhm,
that emotional, and yeah,
mhm.
some a little bit of fear too.
Yeah, I
That
mean, there are things
that
that, can be
trepidation
scary.
is where a lot of the juice comes from.
Yeah.
But at the same time, yes, if you are, it, it's like when I was in flight school. If you are white knuckling, right, you are not. You don't need to be flying the plane.
If you have to call in archangels in order to work with demons, you probably shouldn't be working with demons. If
Right.
you're if you're afraid of the demons, you probably shouldn't be working with demons. Like I look at things like I'm apprehensive about working with the Fae. I have heard too many horror stories, and while I have a plethora of Irish lineage or Gaelic lineage or Celtic, I don't feel a draw to work with them
Mhm.
because I know with that fear, that latent fear that's there, that it could go very wrong very fast. So,
And I will say the mistake that some people make the other way, and anybody who doesn't know us or does know us, we joke about shit all the time.
yeah.
As Muddy says, kinky hell daddy. Okay, don't bring that attitude with you in a ritual, right? There needs to be a certain level of respect there. And it goes both ways. The way I say it to people is, um, I greet the spirits when they come into my circle as a head of state receiving another head of state,
Mhm.
right? There is a level of respect there, but at the same time, this is my turf.
Yeah.
And if you can't be clear on both of those points, if you
Mhm.
it's the middle path again. There's two ways you can fall off, which is you can be too scared, and that fear is what they're going to exploit, and they're going to exploit it to teach you a lesson about it, right? And it can go the other way, which is you're not afraid enough.
Mhm.
Um, there needs to be a healthy level of respect
Yeah,
there.
and if you're struggling with fear, do some shadow work and healing around it because there's probably some reason, some core experience or belief or something you were taught as a child? Because,
Yep.
most of us come through, having, been told our entire lives. If you came through the Western religions, yeah, you've been told all this shit is evil and you're going to hell and yakety
Mhm.
schmackety. But you did bring up an excellent point there on the keyword of respect. So it's like when you're working with any spirit, respect is key. Because when you disrespect the spirit world by, if you have a pact and you don't keep your end of the bargain up, if you have your so if you have your pact, if you have, a petition or a spell or a promise or anything you're doing with that, and you don't hold up your end of the bargain, or you're the devil made me do it of all, you're blaming your shitty behavior on the spirit world. I'm pretty sure Belial didn't tell you to your ex-wife. That's you, bud. And I'm sure Belial probably has some choice things to say about that. But that also brings into, before we segue into the mental health aspect of it, is a lot of times we see people working with thought forms and egregores like, well, the Belial that I work with told me to, go unalive my ex-wife. I'm like, was that actually Belial, or is that your ego manifestation projecting Belial? Is that a thought form egregore Belial you're working with, or a trickster spirit or feeder spirit or something? So, and I don't know how, like, I'm trying to figure out how to explain how to tell the difference between, if you're working with a spirit and like a feeder spirit or imposter or something like that enters. Again, if you have your protections and wardings in place to keep out those type of spirits, that you're not going to have to deal with that as much.
Mhm.
But a lot of it for me just comes to the energy signature. Belial shows up to me very different every single time I work with him, but I know the energy signature of Belial. I know how Belial's. And if suddenly Belial was coming in and being like, "Go off your ex-wife" or whatever, I'd be like, this is some weird advice that is unexpected. I'm either projecting here, I'm either having the spirit tell me what I want to hear, or I'm working with an imposter. More often than not, it's an ego manifestation. You're making the spirit tell you what you want to hear to justify your shitty behavior.
I have
So,
I have two things on that.
mhm.
Um, although, but with the spirits, first one is side note first. I,
Mhm.
I I would I would say it's probably a mistake to say you're working with an egregore versus you're not working with an egregore, because you're always working with an egregore, right? They're always wearing an egregore as a sock puppet. Um, but the first one is on the Belial telling you to um, unalive someone thing is, and this would be a good lead in for the mental health thing, but we're going to have to record that another time. Step 0 of magic before you do anything else is get your shit together.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to kind of touch, like, give a brief. I think the mental health thing could be a longer
Oh yeah,
topic, standalone topic in and of itself.
like
But there are times when you really need to know when to take a step back.
yes,
When, like, if you are in the throes of a deep depression or addiction or anything like that, sometimes you just need to take this and set it aside and focus
yep,
on making yourself better. You can't solve everything with magic. Sometimes you have to go to freaking rehab or take a grippy sock vacation to get your shit together. And that's perfectly
yeah.
okay.
And I'm not saying you have to be like in 100% perfect mental health, because one, nobody is. I'm certainly not. And
But we also know what is delusion and what isn't.
yeah, if you're starting to move into psychotic break territory, this is not the time to be doing that.
And
Right.
honestly, like, I have people all comment all the time, like, "Well, are you sure you're not just mentally ill?" I'm like, while I struggle with certain things on the autism spectrum, ADHD, complex PTSD, is when I am having a psychotic break, when I've had them in the past or anything close to that, or disassociative, I can't tell you what's going on. I'm not here.
Yep.
I can't tell you
I
about some awesome experience I had with Lucifer because I'm not here. I'm not in my body. I am not in control of this.
I used to know someone who's a witch who is schizophrenic
Mm,
and also works with the Fae. And she knows it's time to back away from the magic when she can't tell the difference anymore between
mm,
the hallucinations and the Fae. When
gotcha.
as soon as that doubt enters her mind, it's like, okay, I'm walking away from this for the next 6 weeks, and I'm going to check
Mhm.
my meds, and we're going to get that taken care of. Same thing as if you've got a broken arm, like go to the
Go to the
hospital.
ER. Don't
Broken
try to
arm,
Reiki your arm back together, you know.
you know.
I'm gonna put
The
some crystals on it. That'll surely fix my broken arm.
the other thing is, and this is me. This is a me thing. It's not an everybody thing, but it's definitely something that I would teach as part of my system if I taught my system, which I don't really do, but whatever. Is sort of your self initiation in this is the very first two spirits I got in contact with before I did any of the other goetic spirits were Lilith and Lucifer,
And
precisely so they could be my gatekeepers.
yeah, exactly. I did pretty much the same thing.
And so I don't have to, it's and so whenever I work with a new spirit, they're the first two I call, and they stand guard and they stand
Mhm.
watch and make sure that the thing I'm talking to is the thing I think I'm talking to.
Yeah, like I did very similar when I first started out working with them. Like Lilith was the one I worked with first. She's the one that kind of introduced, like took me to Lucifer, and then varied combinations of them made the introduction to working with other spirits. So I started working with Belial through Lucifer and Lilith. So that's kind of how I kind of went down that aspect of it.
Yeah, and I would and that um Lami would be obviously the better person to comment on this, but that is a very, very common feature in ATRs.
Yeah.
And anything like voodoo, even
Mhm.
remotely like voodoo, is they have a gatekeeper spirit, and that's like the
Mhm.
first one you talk to.
Yeah.
So that
Well,
whenever you go after whoever else, you're sure that it's who
and that
you
can be
think.
different for things. Like I don't work with Asmodeus a whole lot, but like Asmodeus is my gatekeeper for working with the Jinn for the Nectamaran path working.
Yeah, speaking of fear, that's a group I haven't. It's
Yeah,
like
like I
I
was
haven't
like,
worked with them
okay,
because
like
I'm scared of them.
yeah, like I kind of dip my toe in the water. I'm like, oh, this is so different. Like the Jinn energy is so different than any of the energy that I've experienced with other entities. So I know you have to run soon, so I guess to kind of pull in any final thoughts on what we talked about and spiritual awakening. We will definitely have to do another podcast again,
Yeah,
talk about the mental
just
health
good.
stuff, talk about we just do one on tarot as well.
Yeah, yeah, because I think I'm about the hard part with it. I want to do the report ones, not the live ones, because the report
Mhm.
ones I can do around my schedule, which is still very chaotic.
Yeah, that's what I do for like oracle readings and past live readings because like sometimes for me again when I'm doing a reading, like there's going to be a weird chunk of time where I'm just zoned out like and trying to make sense of, what I'm channeling, what I'm
I think
occasionally
they're
I have
better
to look
too
something
because I
up
can sit there with
because
all my books and
yeah, like I did a past reading for a past life reading for a client last month maybe or month before and like I had 4 different Orishas showing up and, like, I had to, like, actually go in and, like, do extra research because I don't work with Orisha, I don't work within
yep.
um, that that sort of rubric and stuff, but
Celtic cross reading. Celtic cross reading takes me like 3 or 4 days to put together
yeah. I
because
tend to do either 3 cards, sometimes if you have particular questions, like matching, like, okay, so here are the 5 questions. I'm gonna pull 5 cards that answer each one of those questions.
Yes. But, like,
So,
what I did for you, like a simple SAO reading
mm,
like that, I can knock that out in a couple, 3 hours.
situation, action, outcome.
Yeah. It's a really great. I don't remember who told me that. I don't remember where I got
Like, I mean, it's similar to the past, present, future,
that.
situation, action, outcome, any of those things. But I mean, I think this has been a really great conversation. We talk a lot offline, so um, it's because sometimes I just need to scream into the void and have someone scream back. But yeah, so we hope that you've taken something away from this. I know this was pretty long, and we tackled a whole lot of topics in here. But this should give you some things to think about when you were just starting out, especially if you're working the left hand path. You know, there's a lot of things to take into consideration, and it's a learning experience. Even for seasoned people who've been doing this for a long time, we're still learning new things all the time. And what wisdom I can impart for you is, and I will say this till I am blue in the face, so it matches my hair. It's about making your practice your own. Like, we'll use since we talked about the Goetia. So there are correspondences for all the Goetic demons. Not a whole lot. I mean, a lot of them tend to bounce through frankincense, myrrh, sandalwood, jasmine, rose, the basic stuff. There is nothing stopping you or any of us from developing our own correspondences for that spirit. Like, a lot of times, if there isn't something available, what I do is, okay, what does this spirit do? Okay, this is a wealth demon. Okay, well, then I'm going to put my wealth herbs in there and correspondences for that, and crystals and correspondences for that. So that's kind of, I think, one of the things. Rome wasn't built in a day. Patience is a bitch, and
I hate patience.
I'm gonna write some nasty stuff on the bathroom wall about patience. Let me tell you. For a good time, don't call.
Fuck patience.
Patience is
Oh,
not my strong suit. But all of this is to help you on your spiritual awakening process and to really give you some food for things to think about, multiple perspectives, and yeah, I think we accomplished kind of what I was hoping to in this. We've been trying to schedule this podcast
yeah.
for like 3 months now, and we've jumped through. Originally we were going to talk about pop culture, occultism and stuff like that. We did touch a little bit on that, but um yeah, so that's something, maybe we'll revisit that. We talked about the mental health and tarot stuff, so
Do 4 hours on Dario Argento and David Lynch
yeah. A
each.
multi-part series. Do you have any final thoughts? If
Um,
you wanna let people know where to find you, anything.
Luciferian Gnosis right now, but that just redirects to my coffee page.
Okay. Can you yes, just, send me links to those so I can put them in the description.
Watch this space. Stuff
Yeah,
will be coming at some point
yes.
when
We get
when
around to it when we get around to it, or we don't.
it'll be done. When it's done. Cheap, fast, good. Pick two.
Yep. Cool. All right. Well, thank you for watching. Don't forget to click like and subscribe, smash the notification bell, follow us on social media, and sign up for our e-newsletter because guess what, guys? Algorithms still suck. Bye.